When a murder has remained unsolved for as many decades as the case of Vishal Mehrotra, I've heard that there are only really three ways it might ever be cracked. A new witness or confession, a forensic breakthrough, or a coincidence. I can tell you right now that we don't have the first two. But a coincidence? Well, in 2019, something astonishing happened. A man sitting in an office spots something in an old folder. Just one word. It could be nothing. Or, after nearly 40 years of agony, it could change everything. I'm Suchin Mehrotra. From BBC Studios, this is Vishal. The true story of a boy who went missing while the world looked the other way. The story of his family, my family, and the story of the investigation into Vishal's disappearance. Chapter 4. The Coincidence. Remember that police officer we heard from back in the very first episode, telling us about what he was doing on the day Vishal disappeared?
My first ever deployment as a police officer was on the 29th of July 1981, the royal wedding, Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer. I was 19, I've never seen the royals before. I was delighted to be there.
His name is Sean Keep, and he went on to have an extraordinary career with the Metropolitan Police. He became a Scotland Yard detective with an enviable reputation for piecing together the tiniest details, even in cases which had been unsolved for years and seemed hopeless.
Justice at last for Stephen Lawrence. 2 men are found guilty of his murder. It's taken 18 years. The teenager was killed by racist youths as he waited at a bus stop in 1993.
Stephen Lawrence was a black teenager murdered in London by a gang of white men shouting racist abuse. For almost 2 decades, no one faced justice for his killing. It became arguably the most famous and significant criminal case in modern British history. The government set up a public inquiry into the murder investigation. Its findings were utterly damning.
Criticisms of the Metropolitan Police Force. It says the investigation was marred by a combination of professional incompetence, institutional racism, and a failure of leadership by senior officers.
When a tiny team within the Met Police decided to go back and reinvestigate, Sean Keep was at the heart of it.
Forensic breakthrough. Fragments of evidence were found on clothes belonging to Stephen and the suspects and in their storage bags.
And it was worth it. Sean and his colleagues finally brought 2 of Stephen's killers to justice.
What that taught me was it can be too easily assumed that something is a lost cause. You never know what you're going to find unless you go through things very laboriously and with fresh eyes or fresh perspective. You never know what opportunities might exist, especially when you have new information and then measure it or gauge it against the information that was available at the time the inquiries were made.
The Lawrence investigation was Sean's last big case at the Met. But as he approached retirement, he found himself in demand by police forces across the country. By 2019, he was working with Sussex Police as part of a small team reviewing historic cases in the region. One day, one of his colleagues read through Vishal's case file before moving on to look at others. Among the files in the office was a completely separate case, which involved a group of paedophiles who'd abused children at a boarding school in Sussex called Muntham House in the late 1970s and early 1980s. It went to trial over 20 years ago, and 3 men had been sent to prison, convicted of sexual abuse offences against 18 boys. But as Sean's team looked again at the details of that case, they noticed something extraordinary. On the list of items found in the possession of the ringleader of that paedophile group when he was arrested was a document he had written. the title of that document was just one word: Vishal.
A document that was written by one of the offenders in the paedophile investigation was entitled Vishal. And that's what drew the attention of my colleague. He saw the name Vishal on a document written by one of the suspects, and he'd only just been reading about the murder of Vishal in the review document.
If you're thinking, just a second, a convicted paedophile had written a document titled Vishal, that's insane. Well, that's exactly how I reacted when I first heard about this. Vishal is a very uncommon name. What was this document, and where did the police find it?
That report, it was part of his learning activity around becoming a social worker. It was like a thesis or dissertation or whatever. It was so many thousand words he had to write around how would I look after and support a boy who's been abused, for instance. I don't know how it was actually located, whether they found it around his house, whether they found it in his briefcase, in his car, or I don't know how they located it. But at some point in that investigation, during one of the searches or one of the interactions with the suspects, they took possession of, seized that report, and it became part of the documents in that case. It is an absolute sliding doors moment. You know, had that not occurred, had he not read the report or someone hadn't mentioned the report entitled Vishal, the connection would never have been made. Sometimes that's what happens in investigations. It is just a piece of luck sometimes. But I do say you make your own luck. If you work hard, you make your own luck. But in this particular case, it is just a sliding doors moment. We thought it was a breakthrough. We thought actually this is a real significant moment in the investigation.
As Sean and his team delved deeper into this gang of prolific abusers, it quickly became clear that they might hold information crucial to Vishal's unsolved case. It turned out that the man who'd written the document titled Vishal had done so in 1983, just 1 year after my brother's remains were found. And yet no one had spotted the potential connection until now. Sean and his team took it further up the chain. They convened a couple of gold group meetings involving some of the most senior officers in Sussex Police. All the signs were that Vishal's case would be reinvestigated by the major crime team. At the end of 2019, Sean retired. Remember, his career had started on the very day that Vishal disappeared, and he left feeling hopeful of a resolution. But a couple of months later, he heard from an old colleague that the case wasn't, in fact, going to be taken any further. Sussex Police had spoken to the suspects. They denied any involvement. And that was that. This possibility of a breakthrough in my brother's case, following that incredible coincidence, was gone.
I just was quite disappointed, quite aghast that was the level of response that Sussex Police felt it needed. And I did feel that it was entirely inadequate, quite frankly. Having worked in the police for many years, I think police officers do a fantastic job. Most of the time, they work really hard and get it right. But from time to time, the wrong decisions are made. And my personal view on this was that this little boy deserved better than just knocking on someone's door and basically saying, "Here, mate, did you murder someone back in the 80s?" Which is effectively what they did, I believe. This little boy deserved better than Sussex Police were delivering for him and his family. I knew that no matter what I did, jumped up and down outside the police headquarters, wrote letters, Mr. Angry from Surrey or whatever, about how it would not sway the decision-making that had taken place. So I had to think about what I wanted to do to try and make somebody at Sussex Police actually say, do you know what? This boy deserves more. This boy deserves a full team of energetic, enthusiastic, resourceful police officers who are trained, who've got access, who've got systems to really go over this line by line and see if we can get to the bottom of it. And that's what motivated me to do what I did.
Hello, Colin Campbell.
Colin Campbell is a correspondent for the BBC's local news in the southeast of England.
Yeah, how can I help you?
Covering counties including Kent and Sussex.
There are hundreds of inflatable dinghies here, and these are primarily boats that...
He's sort of everything you'd want your local news journalist to be.
You're helping people cheat the tax system, aren't you?
Dogged, determined, and committed to investigating stories that have been overlooked.
I'll just grab a pen and a bit of paper.
But in May 2020, as the world was grinding to a halt during lockdown, he gets a tip-off right out of the blue.
So I got a call from this retired police officer, Sean, and he had some information that may be relevant to a serious unsolved case. The information was absolutely fascinating because the police had stopped investigating, so the case was effectively closed, but he was trying to get me he was trying to spark my interest in the case, and it wasn't very hard to do because the information he relayed to me, it was actually frightening. And I think he was frustrated that Sussex police had closed the case down, and that's why he got in contact with me, to alert me out of frustration that the force was not putting everything into trying to investigate this particular group of child sex offenders.
Sean never dreamed he'd go to the media. In fact, journalists were the bane of his life during the Stephen Lawrence reinvestigation. His team tried to keep sensitive details under wraps to avoid alerting potential suspects or witnesses, while reporters were digging for any scoop on this high-profile case. But this time, things were different.
I knew of Colin Campbell, a BBC reporter, from my work in Sussex. I know he was reporting on the abuse to do with the church. He was supporting some victims and doing some good work. So I made contact with him and I basically just said, look, I think there might be something here you need to look into. And we had a telephone conversation and I explained that I believe that there were some links between the Muntham House investigation and the murder of Vishal. And maybe the activity that you undertake could lead to more information that could persuade Sussex Police to restart an investigation. That's what my motivation was.
In my entire career, 25 years as a journalist, I have never had an officer or somebody who had been working within the police ever get in contact with me. So this was extremely rare, and it put a bit of pressure on me because I realise now that he wanted me to investigate thoroughly because the job hadn't been done properly. So I suppose that made me feel a little bit anxious.
And my thought process around journalists was, keep at arm's length, only tell them what we need to tell them. So on this occasion, when I decided to speak to Colin, that was against all of my previously held thoughts and principles. But I felt very comfortable when I spoke to him. So kudos to Colin, I suppose, really.
For decades, there had never been a decent lead in this case. My family still doesn't know what happened to Vishal. So if his name appeared in the possession of a convicted paedophile and nobody made the connection for years, then we'd want the police to investigate. And if Sean's right, and if they're really choosing not to investigate, then maybe Colin is our only chance. Not long after he met Sean, Colin got in touch with us. And since then, he's become a part of our lives. So, Colin, I think we first met back in 2020, when you first spoke to Sean and then came home and you met my dad. What is it about Vishal's case that's really stayed with you, that's got you doing so much for us?
When I first went into your dad's house and I sat there in the front room and he spoke to me, I could really tell the trauma, the upset, the pain that it's caused him for 40 years. I'm just really keen to try to help as much as I can, and the fact that he just hasn't really had the support and the help that he should have got from the authorities here in the UK to properly and thoroughly investigate all lines of inquiry surrounding the Vishal case. It may sound really strange, but I've got a bit of an affinity with Vishal because he was born the same year as I was. I feel for him as a child that he's been let down. So I want to, do as much as I can for you, for your family and for your dad.
What is my hope? Not to kick the police for the sake of kicking the police. If tomorrow they found the culprit, I would forgive them. I'm only here either to make them do their job, which they ought to have done, and or open the case again and do an investigation with the help of Colin and anybody else who wants to help. That's all I can do.
The other thing I really wanted to ask you was, it just feels like every few years Vishal's name and case is dragged back into the media and it's sort of pulled into these wider cases and investigations. Do you feel there's any merit to any of that?
You know what, I don't think these cases have any merit, and unfortunately I think that they've just been a bit of a distraction, but that's one of my anxieties, that I could also be doing exactly the same thing. I'm fearful that all of this information that I've got could add up to absolutely nothing, so I am nervous that I could be upsetting you, your family, but I really think that there could really be something to this information.
I'm not an investigative journalist. I wouldn't even know where to start with something like this. I've presented all the facts as I know them, but that only takes us up to the point where Sean Keep gave Colin Campbell that tip-off. What's happened since then? And what's happening now? This is where I hand over to Colin to lead the next part of our series. I wanted to say thanks, I guess, because, it really means a lot to us to know. I just want to say thank you.
Thanks, Suchin. I remember I came round to your dad's house and your dad quizzed me as he does and said to me, he said, well, okay, if you're going to do this, do it properly. I made him a promise. Yeah. I said, I will do everything I possibly can to try to find out who killed Vishal. So now, it's down to me. Ever since that moment, Sean contacted me, this case has been on my mind, and it's been increasingly difficult to think of anything else. Did this group of men have anything to do with Vishal's abduction and murder? It's daunting to even begin to investigate a crime of this scale, over 40 years after it happened. Okay, so this is how I'm going to start this investigation. I've never done this before. Oh, dog's coming in. I've seen them do this on crime TV series. They had a very large whiteboard and bits of string. Well, I haven't got bits of string, but I've got a very large whiteboard, and I'm going to use this now to try to map out the investigation. I've also got a decent map, of course, and on the map I'm looking at older cops where Vishal's remains were disposed of. Now, the nearest village is Rogate, and rather than sitting here at my desk, I feel it's crucial for this investigation that I go out to Rogate as soon as possible to talk to locals and get a sense of what I'm dealing with and what I need to figure out next. Excuse me. Hello. I'm sorry to bother you. I'm a journalist from the BBC. I'm investigating a crime that happened here 40 years ago. Have you lived in the village very long?
A long time, yeah.
Do you have a second? I'm looking into a case that happened 40 years ago. It's the death of a little boy called Vishal. Do you remember it? Can you tell me what you remember of it?
I remember it was the same day as Prince Charles and Lady Diana got married, and so everybody knew what they were doing. And it was so sad when we heard that a little boy had been found. Well, his bones had been found, and it was then later it was him. But I don't think they ever found who done it. Was it in 81? And it's such a long time ago that I don't know that there's anyone about who can tell you very much.
I am 74 years of age.
74 years of age?
Yes.
And you started living here in Rogate in...
1975.
1975.
My neighbour found the body, or part of the body, of the little boy. I can't understand why one human being can take another human being's life, especially a child, when they're innocent.
What did it do to the village?
Well, people were in two minds. They didn't believe it.
What do you mean they didn't believe it?
It happened to a quiet little backwater because that's what we are. We're out in the sticks. And when you're out in the sticks, they think we're all stupid. Yeah? But yeah, it was very upsetting for the village and for everybody round because they were looking for suspects.
And do you remember the police knocking on your door?
Yeah, I was stopped several times coming back into the village.
So there was a real kind of suspicion in the village as to somebody could have been responsible for the murder here?
Yeah. I mean, you get a murder on your doorstep, you're going to think of everybody, your neighbours, your friends. But then it was somebody else, wasn't it? I thought somebody had been caught for this murder.
No, nobody's been caught for it. It's an unsolved child murder still.
Is it really? I always thought somebody had gone to prison for it. I'm very shocked at that, though. Really am.
Rowgate is a tiny, pretty village in the green Sussex countryside. Around 2,500 people live in the area. It has a school, a church, a village hall, a post office, a car dealership, and not much else. The main road, the A272, runs through the middle, and central London is a couple of hours' drive away. Historically, the main event was Rowgate Fair. It used to be held every year, always on the 27th of September, which by sheer coincidence is Vishal's birthday.
Do you think the race of the little boy made any difference?
No.
To what people thought about in the village?
No. People here are very open-minded. They're not racist. You know, we've all worked with different people, we've got all different nationalities, and no, they weren't racist. It was just a surprise that it happened on our patch and that it was a child.
I think round about the time it happened, Rowgate was very parochial. I mean, it still is to a certain extent.
It was the royal wedding too.
Yeah, and there were lots of other things going on. It wasn't someone from... Had it been a child from the village, irrespective of colour, I think it would have got a much higher profile. But it was someone from London. Oh no, there's people up in London, they do strange things.
It's their own fault sort of thing.
Yeah, well, they choose to live in London. Got it coming to.
Yes.
I mean, it's awful.
Yes.
One would hope that at some point you'll be able to tell his parent or his parents what became of him. I mean, we know what became of him because his body was found, but he needs to know how it happened.
You can never be sure of it being paedophilia, can you? Because there's nothing there to...
There's nothing there for the body to find out, anyway.
There's nothing to prove. But it's so peculiar, otherwise why would you take a little boy?
Somehow I think it had been a little girl, it might have got more publicity, you know.
Like the Madeleine McCann thing.
Yeah.
So much of my work as a reporter is trying to get a first-hand account, to hear from those directly involved, get the interview, get close to the family. But something stops me this time. I was, I suppose, nervous about being just another journalist, raking up the past. I wanted to get as much background as possible before I disturbed the family. I quickly learned that there was another police detective with an extraordinary reputation who had been closely involved in this case from the very start.
My name is Jackie Moulton, and I was a detective sergeant in the Metropolitan Police.
Jackie Moulton was tasked with being the link between the police and the Mehrotra family. She's the police officer we first met back at the very start of this series, who arrived at the family's door within hours of Vishal's disappearance back in July 1981.
My job was to get to know the family and pass on anything I thought was relevant. You're there to observe, you're there to get as much information you can.
Jackie Moulton went on to have a stellar career with the Met Police. You might know her in another way too. She became the inspiration for Helen Mirren's character, DCI Jane Tennyson, in Prime Suspect, one of the most revered police dramas in TV history, seen across the world. I loved watching it as a kid. Jackie's retired now, but I discovered that the case of Vishal Mehrotra has stayed with her all these years. That's why I get in touch with her, and she agrees to meet me at Alder Copse, the little patch of woodland where Vishal's body was found.
He was actually found.
remember was that he'd been moved, they think, by foxes because parts of his body...
I'm surprised by how nervous I feel. This is the first time I've been to the site. It's narrow. It has a stream that runs through it.
Disturbed by yeah.
But it has open fields either side. There are a few houses to the east of it, but it is a secluded spot.
So there was some animal...
I'm a little in awe of Jackie as well, because she is effectively a celebrity police officer. At first, Jackie seems a little wary of me. I'm not the first journalist who has approached her about this case. It's never led anywhere, so I sense she's a bit doubtful about what I can bring to it.
So, as I've been explaining to you, I've uncovered some information. A man had written a confidential document titled Vishal.
Having new information, however, makes Jackie take me more seriously.
What do you think should happen?
From the information that you have given me, Colin, you know, that's some real kind of good investigation that cannot be left as it is. My own experience of cold case reviews shows me, you know, that cases can be solved decades later. This case can be solved decades later if we can come up with any evidence, whatever that is, for the Crown Prosecution Service to say there is sufficient in this case and charge.
What do you want out of this? I mean, this is one of those unsolved cases, not your specific case, but you worked on it. Is there some sort of closure that you need personally on this, do you think?
Well, the fact is that it sticks with you, that you're never going to forget Vishal Mehrotra, but it's more about the family. It's about the victims' family that are left wondering what's happened to their son and to his little sister, what's happened to my brother. As I was driving here today, I was thinking about that little boy looking out the window in a passenger seat of a car, thinking, where am I going? Where's my daddy? Where's my mummy? What's happened to me? It must have been just chilling for that little boy. Chilling.
Once I'd met Jackie, I now had to do what I'd been nervous about. Go to see Vishal's family. I was nervous about causing Vishu any upset or possibly re-traumatising him. I remember the house was immaculately tidy, and that he was I suppose he was quite stern with me. He was understandably despairing at the lack of progress from the police and from the media. I'd seen that every few years there might be some newspaper or online story or even a podcast linking Vishal's case to other horrible child murders and potential scandals and cover-ups. Yet still, there had been no progress in the case, and then interest just faded again. So he grilled me a bit. He wanted to find out what my motivations were, why I was choosing to investigate his son's murder. And he quizzed me.
I told Colin that I've had enough journalists doing all these things and I'm fed up, so I made him promise. When he mentioned that he was in touch with Jackie, that excited me. Then I thought that maybe this is a man I can trust because he wasn't giving up on me. It's very easy to give up on something like this. Very difficult to take it forward because it's an unsolved murder. The police have a lot to answer for. He went out on a limb to investigate. That is sufficient to suggest that this is a serious guy and he's not going to mess about. He's going to try and get to the truth.
As well as Vishu and Suchin, I also speak to Mamta, Vishal's younger sister. She's now in her late 40s. She offers this friendly warning to me and the production team.
Sometimes I get worried about you guys because if you guys aren't careful, you all will end up getting as disappointed as we have been over the years. So to just take care of yourselves as well. I think don't get too emotionally involved because it ends up being really difficult.
So can you see that?
After we meet up a few more times, Vishu tells me he's decided to give me all his meticulously organised files on the case to take home and work through.
You can just have a look and you'll make out for yourself.
There are piles of newspaper cuttings and appeals for information, most from the early 1980s.
What is the date of this? Can you see?
Vishu also has a few police reports in his records, given to him over the years by the investigating officers, but they are crisscrossed with redactions, heavy black lines covering over key pieces of the reports, so I can't make out the names of witnesses or suspects. There's letters from Vishu to senior figures in the police and even occasionally members of parliament. The names of these people change over the decades, but the situation doesn't. In front of me, I have 40 years' worth of documents detailing all the attempts to find out who killed Vishal. Sean Keep had been a young police officer when Vishal disappeared, and Jackie Moulton was at the very heart of the investigation in those vital first few weeks. I contact them, and they agree to go through it all with me.
Hi, Jackie.
Though we start with navigating a video call.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's better. Oh, that's...
Can you hear us all right now?
Yeah.
Oh, you could hear us anyway, sorry. But we can now hear you. Welcome.
You okay, Sean?
I'm fine. Yeah, all good. How about you?
With the police apparently choosing not to investigate further at this stage, we talk about how we might collaborate and find our way through a rapidly growing stack of information, names, dates, locations, and so on.
You're right. Something visual can be very persuasive, can't it? Especially like maps and, the proximity of the school.
For Jackie, returning to older cops is a must. Only some parts of Vishal's body were found in 1982, and police say they've been advised independently that there's little point in searching for the remainder. But Jackie thinks they should.
You just don't know, do you, until you look. That's the point. And then they've spent money on other people, albeit the bodies haven't been found. I understand that.
Yeah.
But time is running out because it is bog land. It is bog. That makes it even more important.
Sean is also conscious that time's running out, and he thinks the school in Sussex, connected to the paedophile ring in the 1980s, is key to the investigation.
I think we need to have a picture of who lived at the school during the summer of 1981. In other words, we've got a list of victims, a list of pupils who weren't or haven't disclosed that they were victims, but you never know, they might have been, just haven't disclosed. So that's a separate list. And then a list of people who were living at the school, all of whom could have valuable information for us.
So, why is a school in Sussex, 40 miles from where Vishal went to school in London, why might that place be so crucial to this investigation? Well, remember a man, a convicted paedophile who worked at that school. Police found a folder in his house, a document with the name Vishal written on the front, which he wrote just a year after Vishal's body was discovered, in the same county. For years, no one made the connection. For Vishal's sister Mamta, this was a huge opportunity missed.
Vishal is not a common Asian boy's name by any way, shape, or form. Vishal is not a common name. He could have seen it on TV, but when? And why would he remember it? Vishal is not a common name. It just isn't. And this Vishal document that has been sitting with the police for 20 years. I mean, you have messed up the original case and now you are even messing up everything else? Why aren't you reopening this case? There's something more to this than meets the eye.
For me, if this was known in the early days, this would be massive. I can imagine all sorts of actions being raised. Go and speak to all the known victims, go and speak to the people at the school, go and speak to all those people. And for me, you can't just say, well, 40 years has passed, therefore there's no point in going back and speaking to those people. You've got to pick it up right from the beginning and go through all of that. Yes, I accept that many people will forget or not know, but you can't just write off that and say, oh no, people won't remember. You've got to go back and do it. It doesn't matter whether it happened yesterday or 50 years ago. A young boy was killed and murdered and ended up in Sussex. The time factor doesn't matter to me. We're talking about justice and we're talking about ensuring that the police do their duty.
Sean and Jackie are clear. I'm faced with having to do more than Sussex police ever did before they decided that this group of paedophiles didn't have any links to Vishal's murder. I have to find out if there were any links between where the group were operating and where Vishal was last seen. Have they ever done anything like taking a child from the street? I need to talk to their victims, and then I need to find the men themselves. And it's a long shot, but I need to find anyone else who may know something about this case, who may have seen something, even if it was 40 years ago. I've got Mumpta's words ringing in my ears when she said, "Don't get too emotionally involved, because it ends up being really difficult. But I'm determined to get to the truth of this. I promised Vishu, I promised Suchin, and yet already I can feel myself getting really frustrated with all these redactions in the various police reports." But then, a possible breakthrough, when something really unexpected happens. I can't sleep for thinking about the case. It's 4 a.m. I'm lying awake, so I get up and make a cup of tea. One of the police reports is lying on my kitchen table. I pick it up and have another look. The early morning sunlight is shining in through the windows onto the paper, and I start to notice I can see through the redacted sections. I can see the names of witnesses, including a man who says he saw people acting suspiciously at older cops and who was later hypnotised by the police. There's his name, the sun shining on it, clear as day. Next time.
So have you spoken to anybody about this publicly in the last 41 years at all?
No.
Done any interviews at all?
No.
If you have any information, however minor, that you feel could help our investigation, please contact us confidentially at vishalpodcast@bbc.co.uk. In a statement, Sussex Police admitted the potential connection between the Vishal document and this murder investigation had been missed for 23 years. It says it was impossible to tell whether discovering it earlier would have made any difference to the investigation. 40 years on, Muntham House has been recognised as a centre of excellence for its work with young people with special educational needs and is rated as an outstanding school. Vishal is a BBC Studios podcast. It's presented by me, Colin Campbell, and Suchin Mehrotra. The series was written and produced by Satyesh Manharaja. Audio production, sound design, and original music by Steve Urquhart. The executive producer is Alistair Jackson.